There's something I've been struggling with, and it's very much along the lines of how do you talk about topic, especially a contentious topic when somebody holds a different position. The idea is that you take exaggerated extremes in order to explore something that's in the middle. You take up a position that's so exaggerated it's preposterous, and everybody can recognize that. And I think there's some equivalent, not in conversation, but stretching it out into something like your goals, something like productivity. And I came to wonder what would happen, because it did happen to me. It has happened. It is happening to me where I'm I'm too productive for my own good. And it's not exactly like, oh, I'm accomplishing all my goals in life, and now I have nothing to do. It's not like that. I have a lot of stuff that I'm moderately interested in, and I'm doing a whole lot of that. And I'm doing a whole lot of that, and I'm leaving a kind of trail of partially, perhaps even mostly finished things, interesting things. And as I move along, I'll get interested in something new and something new, and none of it'll really be done. Or I will have notes on. I'll take, for example, I have bookmarks. So I'll surf around and be like, "Oh, this is an interesting piece of software. Hey, maybe I should try that cool new game." And several years pass, and I'll have this reference to it, and I'll be looking through my bookmarks, and I'll see something. I'll see some old thing, thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm still interested in that. But I'm no longer in the same frame of mind as I was when I originally made the note. Or I have other things that are more interesting to do. And so I'll have this version of myself which was interested enough to have noted it and is still interesting enough now. But it's like that is a weight that is pulling me back to my past selves interest. Maybe I should pronounce that differently. My past selves' interests have deposited all of these layers of cool things that are technically speaking holding me back. Technically. But I mean, if I valued what I was working on enough, I would look back at that other stuff and think quite easily, I would think, well, those things aren't important. I'm doing what I really want to do. I'm doing what I really want to do, and I'm so positive about it. I'm so productive about it. I'm so into it that these other things, they just don't bother me. So I can I can leave them there, or I can delete the bookmarks, or whatever the heck. But I don't feel that way. I don't feel strongly that way. So maybe that's a sign of my poor motivation. Maybe I've chosen the wrong things to be interested in after all, and there is an allure to the things that I had been exploring in the past. And maybe I should really be pausing or stopping or slowing what I'm currently interested in and going back to, and we're still talking old bookmarks. So, I mean, come to think of it, for those of you who are the type, you'll see there's right up there, there's stuff. So that some of you will recognize from live streams and from what I cut out of live streams being the book of fairy tales. And I've only been going through half, and I'm not even halfway done that half, because that book has got, it's a weird book because it's got one half is this way and the other half is this way. It's got two books put together for cost reasons. And and you'll notice on top of that there's a, it looks remarkably like one of my notebooks, and that's kind of the point, so that it'll look good on the shelf over there. And it's full of blank paper, and it's full of blank paper because I was learning to draw. And on top of that is a pencil case. And I spent a very long time um, trying to figure out what what things I needed to draw. And that even includes bookmarks. So it includes references to um, different kinds of art styles that I like, that I want to be able to do, and different tutorials and this kind of stuff. So I did all this work. I fell in love with this woman Gabrielle's one model, one style of one particular caricature, and like, oh, I totally want to be able to do that. And so I, because artists aren't the type, she could only partly articulate what I needed in order to even sit down and begin uh, taking her lesson for what that was worth. And and so I had to do all this research. I had to learn about the topic, and I got into it. And it's there. It's there, and I put it in the way. And every once in a while, very much like a lot of the other things I'm interested in right now. Like I've been taking a break from writing, which I shouldn't have, because every time I'm really into the writing, I think to myself, this is so insultingly easy that I could literally pull this off every day if I actually just had what it took to sit down for 2 hours a day. I could write another little piece. And I go back and I listen to my old stuff, and I stopped my narrated stuff because I thought it was just so awful. But I'll go back and I'll listen to it, and I really, really like it. And it's weird. Like I go back and I reread my old stuff and I really like it. And I go back and I look at my old all kinds of stuff and I really like it. But when I pause now, even though it's like right there, and I might really like it when I go reach for it, it's not in my head at the moment when I'm distracted by other stuff. And I'm wondering how many other people are like this. It's not exactly like being uselessly scatterbrained, which is how a lot of people will describe themselves. It's it's being productive but not being effective. And I've always thought of it as being the 80% problem. And the 80% problem is something like um, you're interested in something, you pursue something, and all that's those steps. You set aside the time, you work on something, you pursue it, and you get to 80%, then fizzle, and nothing gets done. Nothing gets to 100%. And a lot of, like, say, businesses are kind of like that, which is they'll found themselves and do all this kind of work, and a year will pass, a second year will pass, and somehow, if they make it past the half a year mark, which is a challenge unto itself in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of businesses will collapse at that point. Kind of, they don't mature to this thing. And a person with projects is kind of like that too. They've got their own personal thing, they're working on a thing, and time passes, and there's some 50% mark where they're highly effective, and then it kind of slopes down to nothing. It fizzles out, it stops, there's a distraction, there's an emergency, and then coming back and picking it back up again never happens. And so I've kind of got that, but with many, many, many things. So I guess one of the things that maybe a lot of more people will understand is reading. So I've got a lot of books up there, like a lot. And I I have learned about myself since having purchased a lot of these books, which is um, I can't tolerate a certain kind of writing. I just can't do it. And I guess I could force myself. And I've noticed that I'm not really interested in at one level, I'm not really interested in fiction in the traditional bubblegum for the brain sense. I I I used to only think of it that way, and then I got into works of fiction which have things to learn from, and then I went into things like philosophy, and I don't value what I used to back then. And in that sense, I can look at a book and think, okay, well, like right now, the thing that I'm working on reading is the Three Musketeers. right? So, big, intimidating tome. Not that the text is particularly big or anything like that. Um, and it's significant. It's significant enough. It doesn't have Bible thickness paper or anything like that, so it's not a massive collection of works like I've got for Agatha Christie, and even that's partial. Um, so it's one thing. It's not part of a series, um, and it's complete fiction, and I'm not exactly motivated. Now, another book that's up there, right, is a book that I'm highly interested in called The Art of War, and um, it's a book that I had read when I was young, and I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I was playing role playing games. Dungeons and Dragons is what people think role playing games are, and I enjoyed strategy. I mean, classic. Judge me for how common I am for my interests like that, where I like strategy and I like things and I like technology and I like procedure and all this kind of stuff, right? There's a box of stuff, and once you understand some of the things and you go out there and you see what other people with those traits, even the exaggerated traits, what they do, go and examine the rest of the stuff they do, because you'll probably like a lot of that too. So it's a really great way. You learn a bit about yourself, go out there and see it in the world. You'll find more stuff that those people like, that they've played with, that you'll probably like too, and round yourself out. But that's if you're ever bored and you don't know what to do in life, you learn about yourself, you learn about the things you like, find that out, find more about it in the world, see what things are related, see what other people are doing, other people that like those things, go learn about them and what they do and what they want, and pursue that a little bit. And that's how you will figure out a lot more about what you want. And in a sense, I've done that with a lot of my projects. And the reason I brought up reading, is a great example. I think a lot of people, hopefully most of my viewers will recognize, is that I've got a lot of books up there, and I've learned a bit about what I do and don't like. But that aside, even the things that I do like, I haven't read it all. I mean, I haven't read it all, and I don't feel as compelled as I think I ought to, maybe as I used to be. And so I've got a lot of books back there and a lot of books over there and shelves of stuff where it's just sitting there unread. It's definitely something I want to read. Like, I'll look at it and I've started pruning it all. I'm thinking, okay, well, I got this because it was inexpensive. I got this because it was nearby, because it was kind of a curiosity. Like, for example, I got a book called The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is a garbage book, but it's popular. So, I read it when I was little. I read it when I was stupid and impressionable, right? And I reread it now, and it's just absolute trash. It's absolute trash. Maybe from a storyteller's perspective, right? You can respect and find great interest and value in something, even though it's got a lot of awful in it. And a lot of popular books, a lot of classics are like that. It's generally speaking a garbage work, but the context of when it was published and the influences it's had, etc., all make it historically notable. But a lot of these books are like that. Like, what's up there that I've actually read recently? Oh, here's one. This is another nice book. Beautiful, beautiful book. This cushy, almost leather. It's nice and it's old, and this is a classic story. This is the one that has the poem, and I probably have half of it memorized, but if I read it off, it'll be really. It goes, Mistress Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and marigolds all in a row. And I knew that. And I knew a version of that. Well, I knew it wrong. And so I wanted to read this classic book, but this is not a good book. It's not good. And there's a lot of stuff that's in my library that's like this. It's historically notable. I mean, I've got the collected works, and it's really good, of Sherlock Holmes, and it's just trash. I hate it. It's garbage, but I have to read it because it's a classic, right? But it's work. It's fiction, and it was entertaining for some people, but it's very obviously a garbage serial meant for people that are just not me. It was meant for newspapers, for everyday working folk to go and read a snippet here and there, and it was. I totally know why the author got burnt out and absolutely hated the equivalent of being typecast into writing more and more of it. You got to pay the bills. That's the thing that people absolutely insist. So there's like the resurrection of the main character after it was just summarily killed off by the author, because the author just wants to go, okay, I'm done, done. Character's dead. We're done. so much of a so much of a sustained amount of flack that the author came back and resurrected the character. Yeah. So I mean, if you're a reader of Sherlock Holmes, there's actually a point when you can stop and know that there's more written, but you know that the story's it's over. The author was done, was absolutely done, and you can have the rest of however many works and just go, I'm not reading the rest of that. It's not canon. And you be correct. You be correct. Um, and that is another great example of of doing something and knowing when to stop and continuing anyway. Because that guy would, I mean, you got to pay the bills, and even though that was a good writer, obviously, because there was great success in the actual original serial. Um, it there was more money or more opportunity in pursuing additional Sherlock Holmes than there was in the other stuff that that author wanted to get into. So I've got a lot of books, and like The Secret Garden, it's a book and it was popular, and it's even in it was in my consciousness. As soon as I read that, I absolutely recognized where the version of it in my head came from, which is a wonderful thing to just to stumble into. You hear about the classics and you read them and you stumble into something, and like, oh man, that's where that came from. And I've got a whole lot of that there that, and I'll go through and I'll read a paragraph. I've got uh Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, and I couldn't get past 3 paragraphs before going, this is absolute abominable writing. This is terrible. Can't deal with this. I can't deal with this right now, so I'll put it in a box and maybe later. Maybe later. Future self can deal with that. Like making a bookmark, right? It's a thing that's I want to get through it because blah blah ideologues are really happy with it or whatever the hell, and I should read it because you know maybe they're right, or maybe it's interesting, or maybe it's partially useful, which is what a lot of philosophy professors will do. They'll go through like strata of the history of philosophy, and people will go, oh my god, that I never thought like that, that is the best way, the model of looking at the world. And the philosophy teacher, the professor, will snicker under their breath and introduce something new, and all the students are like, oh my god, I never thought about that. That's absolutely a great response to this other philosophy. That's the way I should look at the world. And the professor does it again. And the teacher's like, and the students are all like, oh my god, that's amazing. That totally answers all these questions from this other. And the professor will do it again, and they'll be like, wait a second. This is a better model of, and this answers all these. And the professor will do it again, and the students are like, okay, look, maybe you can just get to the point. The professor will do it again, and the students will think, are you telling us that there's no answers to all this stuff, that these questions from like ancient Greece that got answered again and then got a response and got interpreted and got and it just gets better and better. It's like there's actually, and the professor will do it again. The students are all, oh, there is no end. None of it's really correct as such, and it isn't just in the contemporary day, and it isn't. And there's context, and a lot of these people made some fundamental stupid mistakes that were. And you mean humanity isn't very good at any of this still? It's been thousands of years, and we've had some of the brightest minds we could conceive of. And there's more. And I'm learning that. And these are people that actually get a proper PhD in philosophy. That you respect that kind of person. Like if I were to read through all this shit and actually understand it, I would be, it would not be arrogant of me to demand a whole lot of respect from many classes of person. But I'm not going to read it all. I'm not going to understand it all. So like I can't even memorize that one poem from that one book. That's awful. But it's an example of a thing that I did, and the other books are examples of things that I'm interested in that I had in the past. And I'm working on other stuff, and I'm kind of interested in other stuff, but that stuff I'm going to leave there, not just because it's a good backdrop for videos, but because I should be reading that stuff, shouldn't I? I mean, those are classics, shouldn't I? What else is there? The Last of the Mohicans. Tom Sawyer. The Scarlet Letter. A Journey to the Center of the Earth. The 1001 Nights. I'm absolutely going to get to that. You already know Grimm's fairy tales, but there's actually another compilation of fairy tales, and that's just through those. There's other interpretations, and there's additional fairy tales. No, like all of Charles Dickinson, all of Agatha Christie, and I've got more and more, and they're good. And they're not just classics. Some of them are contemporary good, and I don't mean like Ayn Rand or anything like that. So that's not contemporary. That's not in the same class as those things. Let's say that they're non-philosophical fiction. Okay, right. The Time Machine has commentary and all this kind of, and it's good, but I'm not working on it all. I've actually got 4 books on the go, and I'm just such a bad, slow reader. It's awful. And I've got bookmarks. I've got all these little projects, and I've got all these 80%. And some of them I continue to use, but I don't improve upon the thing. So what do I do? What do I do? Because every single day I come across more interesting stuff, and I'm making a trail of really cool things that I could be working on that I might never look at again. And it's weird. And I've kind of put a stop to a whole lot of the productivity that I've had in the past, like the projects that I'm working on doing, accomplishing, that I'm giving to other people, right? And I've kind of stopped a lot of it, but new stuff will come that's really interesting too, that kind of fills that. And I'm never finding enough time to go back to all these other interesting things and even discover what was fascinating about these things in the first place. And I don't know if very many people experience this, because I made a video called cloning, and cloning is a concept that I stumbled upon, refined, made, that will take you as a highly productive, like there's, they're the people that are effective, and there's me, right? So I'm highly something, and I have accomplished great things. Like I have accomplished great things that you won't know about, because I do stuff anonymously, and I have done these things, and I lost my train of thought. And yet I have more that I could be working on. I've got this, there's so much there. There's so much that I've done. And I was talking about the diary, where you clone yourself and you write a whole bunch of stuff and you go revisit stuff constantly, and it's a driving force for inspiration, motivation, etc. And ideas that get jotted down never get forgotten because it's on paper. Scan it in and make backups and stuff like that, so it's technically not forgotten in the sense of, like, if your house burns down, what are you going to do, right? Do think about that. So if you actually value your agenda, have it in your pocket so that you can run away with it if your house is on fire, or make a regular backup of it. You've got a camera, take a picture of it, upload it somewhere, like, so that you don't lose a little piece of yourself. But that is a great example of creating notes, and the notes are valuable. And if you read yesterday, and you so wake up in the morning, you read yesterday, think, oh wow, I accomplished so much yesterday. This is just a quick summary. It inspires you. There's also a bunch of stuff you didn't finish yesterday because maybe you had a bunch of things you wanted to do, but you thought too highly of yourself, and it's like biting off more than you can chew. You never got to some stuff, things came up because life happens, and so you can pull some of it forward today, or you can be like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that right now. And you also look at last week and do a little bit of the same. Well, there was some stuff last week that I didn't quite look at, and am I interested now? Do I want to schedule that for the future? And you put it as one of today's tasks or whatever. Or maybe you just kind of like let that sit as well. Maybe you ignore it. But you also look at last month, and you do kind of the same thing. Like, okay, it's been a month and I still haven't looked at that thing. I don't remember working on it. Do I really care? You can leave it there, or you can pull it forward, or you can schedule it. And then you look at a year ago. Never talked about this, but imagine being able to do that. And you have these books of, like, go and get some really nice hardcover books, use them as journals, and note the things you want to do every day, and then just one sentence or one word, check marks, whatever the heck, your tasks for the day. There's things you're scheduled to do, even if it's like go grocery shopping, go and do this, go and clean your kitchen, go and do this. And note it. And then what would happen if you read your yesterday's day of things to do? Yesterday, last week, last month, last year. What would happen in 10 years? You're looking back and thinking, well, what would happen if I read 10 years ago? That's and it's something like that when I'm going through a bunch of my old bookmarks or my old projects, and I really don't want to show up, but I wonder what would happen. Because this is going to eventually happen, because I've got a document camera and I've been using it to read the fairy tales. So it's like okay, if I look back in my art book, I'm an artist, honest. It's like I'm a doctor, not that kind of doctor. I'm an artist, not that kind of art. Not like not a real artist. I just write. Not a real artist. It's words. It's not like drawing. Okay, and you can look back at this stuff. It's like looking back at your kindergarten stuff. So like I'll have the date on it, and theoretically speaking, I could work a little bit on this every day, and I could go back and reread other stuff. And I'll take notes, including notes on the things that are just stupid because they were told to me. And even though I can memorize it, and I have memorized it, I'll do it, and then I'll write a note on it as though I'm an idiot that's going to forget this, because I'm an idiot and I'm going to forget this. Right? Like, okay. It's like, okay, this is me fiddling around with an eraser. This is the names of all the different kinds of pencils and the leads, and me, and it's dumb. And it can be like yesterday's to-do lists groceries. That's just dumb. But if you look back, I mean, this was December 2018. I'm gonna look back, that was a long time ago. Okay, number one, that was a long time ago. I'm still not really anywhere. And like, okay, well, the very next day, kind of like later that day, like face proportions, and the most ugly example ever. And just imagine looking back at your kindergarten, your grade school writing, your high school writing. If you're an adult, imagine if you're a senior and you're looking back at stuff you did in the 80s. You're like, wow, that was, look at how far I've progressed. It's quite motivating. I mean, the next day, well, what could it turn that into? What that honest, that could be a face, kinda. I'm working on proportions. It's not being explained very well because artists are not good at explaining, and then it goes on like, oh, I'm fiddling with noses. And I'll probably go through this again streaming with a document camera. You're like on and on and on until I'm like practicing eyes and the nose and lips, and you're like, these are almost faces. And like until I decide I'm just gonna work on the shape of eyes because I can't get left and right working. And it's fascinating going back and looking at there are these old games that I have in my Steam account, or there's these old books, or there's these whatever things that you were working on until it's like, and I'll hold it back because I did a little bit of more recent stuff, but I'll go back to when I was still into this regularly enough, and I'll hold it back so you're not going to see just how bad some of it was. Are you like, you can see that, right? It's like not. I like it. I still can't understand how to do some of it, so I'm faking it because stuff's not being explained right. But imagine having a whole life full of trails of that. I wanted to learn more about math so that I can understand theoretical physics, because I've always liked that. I want to understand a little bit of this language or that language, or and I'm wondering what's gonna happen. What, like, I run the world's largest Facebook group on learning this one tiny minority language. Like, I haven't learned it yet. Nobody knows how to teach it properly. It's probably, if I do it, I'll probably be among the world's experts at actually trying to explain that language. This is not a big accomplishment or anything like that, because I can do it badly and be the best at it if there's no competition. So what do I do? What do I do? I really have no idea how to conclude this video because I just rambled on all over the place. And I think that the library, it's not exactly an example, right? The book example, the journal example, the library, the projects, the bookmarks, how many videos are in your watched later list, how many, and at what point do you stop? At what point do you retire from being interested in anything current, and do you go back and honor who you used to be and look at the stuff that you were interested in? Maybe not enough to quite be working on, not enough to be working on and continue to be working on until it's done, or not enough to be working on it and then still working on it now. Just the archaeology of your own life. And this is something that's really bothered me. We don't have, I think that humans should be bonded, not marriage. That's a different kind of thing to think about. But I think that humans should come in groups, and we should be working on projects together to finish them, because we'll have different, like, groups that should be assembled with different personalities, and they'll be interested in different things, so they'll complete each other's sentences, kind of thing. And they can each kind of go back and look at old stuff and bring it up, and they can just finish it together. And so that instead of there being one human who's all alone, half muddling through everything, we've got a team. And we've got a team, and even if you've got triple the productivity that you want to accomplish, the fact that you've got a team with overlapping interests and abilities, you could do far, far more. And it's one of the things I've thought about. It's one of those dreams that I'm kind of scared to articulate, because the I think humans will have to go there as kind of a tiny government in a sense. It's something like an extension to what it is for you to be an individual. And it's not quite community, but it's imagine that you're tied to a few people, deeply tied to a few people, more than siblings. You're not keeping in touch like friends or family. And you're all working on the same stuff together, and you're all accomplishing a whole lot of stuff together. And one of you can have a terrible day, and the other two will make up for it. So you come as a team of three and just constantly, constantly. You look back, and one of you would be reading the books and judging them and saying, hey, you might like this book. I read through a little bit of it. It's not my thing, but I know it's your thing. You totally need to read The Time Machine. That's amazing. That's got to be like third on your list. That's going on the pile. You're going to read that. No, you shouldn't read The Scarlet Letter. It's just not your thing. And reasons, and should imagine having a lot of the stuff that you have before you pre-curated for you. So instead of being this massive library that I'm intimidating, I'm intimidated at judging it. Like, how bad a person am I that I would talk bad about how awful The Secret Garden is? It was pretty bad. I'm not unhappy that I read it, but I mean, I could have done something else. And this is why I like to read this stuff on camera, so that it's not a complete waste. I can laugh at the fairy tales because they're just awful, but I wouldn't really be a better person for having read that stuff. But I am a better person in some sense of having shared it, which is different. But imagine having part of your life and in turn doing it the same. If you're the type, working with and for others is an extremely fulfilling thing. And a huge number of people, like, you might be young and independent and blah blah, but like, I really hope you discover that in some sense serving, maybe not in marriage, maybe not in friendship, maybe politically, and I don't mean in the cause sense, but maybe in the community organizing sense, in bringing a freshly baked pie to your neighbor, somehow in serving others. I think a lot of people find incredible fulfillment with that. And I've rambled on far enough. I think I made a few points there somehow, and I'm scared to articulate the idea of what would happen to humanity if we came in teams and they were not like how we have siblings or business relationships. It's not like how we have towns. It's not like how we have friends. That there's something where we could churn through the backlog of our stuff and we could curate it, and then all the stuff that we're currently working on, we'd be motivated for. There would be purpose for, and we could do it and share it and all this good stuff. So yeah, I better stop. This was interesting for me.